All right, thank you, Sue. I am ready. Good afternoon to all of our participants. I am literally thrilled to be here with you today for what is now my second webinar of the day, addressing change management and relationships. So as Sue indicated, I felt it was important to give you a little bit of information about me and my background so you know who's talking to you this afternoon and you understand kind of my perspective. So as mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of Blue Care Network of Michigan. We are the largest health maintenance organization, or HMO, in the state with roughly 46% share, something I'm very proud of. I am also a vice president at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, which is our parent company. So BCN is a wholly owned subsidiary of BCDSM. Prior to joining the organization in this role, I served as the president and CEO for Life Secure Insurance Company, which is another wholly owned subsidiary of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. I've been in my role here for roughly 2.5 years, and I'm going to share some of those insights that I gained coming into this role at that time. I was a senior leader for a subsidiary of a very large national health insurance carrier that if I named them, you would recognize, but I won't because they're competition. Prior to joining Blue Cross, and I've been in the industry overall roughly 27 years. I started as an intern in information technology where I was a programmer developer, went to school for mechanical engineering. I've worked in a variety of capacities. I've done everything from training, design, and development to operations, hospital contracting, sales, account management, and distribution channel management. I am a licensed health and accident insurance agent here in the state of Michigan and have been for many years. I'm also an active participant in the National Association of Health Underwriters, among a host of other professional associations. But that one in particular is near and dear to me because I've been a member since 1997, and it really gave me exposure to a lot of different things in the industry, which really propelled me to the role that I'm in today. I am a proud Wolverine as a graduate of the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I'm actively involved in my local community. I believe in doing a lot of community service and volunteer work, and I am most proud to tell you that I am the 2018 NMA Executive of the Year. So, enough about me. What I want to do is tell you a little bit about what we're going to discuss today so you have some context and understand what to expect. First and foremost, I'll spend some time just briefly defining change management. What is it that I mean when I say this to you? Because I want to ensure that we're aligned for the balance of our journey of the presentation. Secondly, I'll talk again briefly about the importance of change management. Why do we care? And when people on my team talk to me about presentations and putting things together, I often reference what I call the what, so what, now what. So this is part of that. What is it? Why do we care? And then what are we going to do about it? Which takes me to our next point. We'll talk about champions of change management. There are lots of people that consider themselves experts in this field. I am not one of them, but I will share with you who those people are and some of the books and things that you might use as reference points following our discussion today. Fourth, we'll talk about John Kotter. John Kotter is known to many as the father of change management. So we'll talk about his steps to successful change. And then finally, we'll wrap it up and spend the bulk of our time talking about some of my personal experience and the lessons I've learned over my 27-year journey in this industry. And then beyond that, as Sue indicated, we'll have, I believe, lots of time for question and answer, which in my mind is most important because I want to make sure that this is of value to you and that we're answering the questions you may have. All right, so defining change management. What do I mean when I talk about change management? If you were to Google change management, there are all sorts of definitions, but the one we've picked for the purpose of today is activities that prepare people, teams, and companies in making organizational change, and that can include things like redirection or redefinition of resources. I oftentimes call it repurposing people when I talk about it here in our organization. So again, just getting prepared to make that organizational change and redirect your business or your team. So there are a few change drivers that I think we will all agree tend to be prevalent no matter which industry you're in. The first is new technology. I know this is something, again, that we're all impacted by. We have a host of changes in technology that impact us in the health insurance industry, and we're doing our very best to embrace those changes. I think anyone that wants to be successful in implementing change in their organization has to recognize the technology that's available to them and how that technology has changed over the course of time. The second change driver is pressure from new business entrants. We all have competitors that we may be more familiar with, but then we now in many cases have new competitors that are entering our markets or our industry. I know for us in the health insurance arena, we have some non-traditional disruptors, I call them, folks like Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, JP Morgan Chase, that have come out and said, we think we can do health insurance better. And they're set on disrupting the way we do things today. And so it's important for us to understand what those new business entrants are trying to do and how they could put added pressure on our existing business model. And then most importantly, we need to be prepared to make the change. And then third, change in consumer habits. I mentioned Amazon earlier. I was one that was a little bit resistant when Amazon first showed up on the market. I still wanted to go to that storefront and do all my shopping. And then about 2 Christmases ago, I decided I was going to order a few toys online for my children. And there was all sorts of boxes and things that showed up, and I realized this is incredibly convenient. And so my habits as a consumer changed. Now, I still like to shop. I still go to those stores, but I do a lot more shopping online. And my expectation now as an Amazon Prime member is that I'm going to get my whatever I've ordered within 2 days, and it's going to come right to my porch. And so I'm looking for that convenience. What I'm finding in our health insurance industry is that our members or patients are also looking for convenience because they have that experience in another space. They translate that into everything that they're doing now. So then as a business concept, this was really considered a new approach in the 1990s. There were huge investments, lots of dollars invested by various companies, and literally thousands of books written on the topic. What's a little bit disconcerting, however, is the fact that there's still a 60 to 70% failure rate when it comes to change management. It doesn't mean people aren't changing. It means they're not doing it as effectively or as efficiently as they can. So there are a handful of statistics we pulled here. I have to credit my team. I didn't pull these myself, but I thought these were very interesting, and I wanted to share them with you because I think these reinforce the importance of change management. So the first one is around generational shift. According to the U.S. Census Bureau projections, millennials are actually on the cusp of surpassing baby boomers as the nation's largest living adult generation. As of July 1, 2016, which was the latest date for which we have population estimates, there are roughly 71 million millennials, which are defined as those people ages 20 to 35 in the year 2016 again, and then 74 million boomers, which are those ages 52 to 70. In 2019, which is next year and it's fast approaching, millennials are actually projected to overtake baby boomers in population as their numbers increase to 73 million and boomers decline to 72 million. And then you also have, interestingly enough, Generation X, which is ages 36 to 51. They're projected to pass the boomers in population by 2028. Why is this important? We know that generations tend to learn differently. They tend to approach business challenges differently. We have to be cognizant of or aware of the different generations that exist within our organizations so that we are appropriately embracing the entire population and ensuring that we're leveraging all of our talents and skills appropriately. So generational shift is something you have to pay attention to. The way we did things 10 years ago might work for those of us that are, generation, I think I'm Gen X. Am I Gen X? Yeah, I think I'm Gen X. Gen X or boomers or Gen Y. The millennials have a different way of approaching things, so we have to keep those things top of mind. The next statistic is around social media. This was also really interesting to me. In 2005, only 5% of American adults use social media, so just 5%. In contrast with 69% of the public today. So when I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about obviously things like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat. My kids use that. I don't know a thing about Snapchat. But there are so many more of us that are embracing social media today. And then based on research conducted on social media adoption as far back as 2005, again, only 5% of us were using those platforms. So that's something we need to be cognizant of. There was a time when if your business was doing really well, or maybe you had challenges, people would talk about it and be word of mouth. It is so much easier to transmit and share feedback, whether positive or constructive, using social media. So as you embrace change, think about those factors as well. The next interesting statistic is around the leadership demographic. So in 2017, female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies achieved an all-time high of 6.4%, or 32 women heading major firms. It's still a relatively small number, but when you look at as recently as 1995, there were actually no female CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. So this is important to me because I am a female CEO. And I happen to think that men and women sometimes approach things a little bit differently. I know my predecessor here was male. He served in this role for 6 years. I can't tell you how many times coming in I heard, this is how so-and-so did things. And I had to say, I'm not so-and-so. My leadership style is different. And the way we're going to embrace change is different. And so, again, those are just things to maybe keep in mind as you're embracing change in your organization. Next, e-commerce. So roughly 80% of Americans shop online today versus just 22% 18 years ago. In the U.S. alone, e-commerce represents roughly 10% of all retail sales, a figure that's grown nearly 15%, growing actually 15% annually. And another interesting stat there is that as much as 11% of online shoppers now shop online via their smartphones on a weekly basis, which leads me to my next statistic, and probably my favorite on the slide. So in 2007, Apple introduced the first generation iPhone. That wasn't that long ago. I don't know about those of you on the webinar, but I am an Apple iPhone owner, and I have the X or the 10. I got it last year, and it's already dated. There's something else that's on the market. But since 2007, more than 1.2 billion units have been sold, and 715 million iPhone users, or iPhones rather, are currently in use worldwide. So again, just some statistics that I thought were interesting, something to contemplate as we talk about change management. We have to recognize that change is literally all around us, and the pace of change is only getting more swift. With that in mind, I want to reference a quote from Jack Welch, who says, "Change before you have to." As business professionals, it's imperative that we keep this in mind. We've seen large successful companies like Blockbuster, Circuit City, Toys R Us, that have folded due to change and their inability to keep up with the pace of change. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there are a number of champions of change management. There are lots and lots of people that would consider themselves experts, and there are literally thousands of books, like I said. I wanted to highlight for you today just quickly a few of those books. These are considered bestsellers, or they're top in their field. The first one is Change Management by Jeffrey Hyatt and Timothy Creasy. The second is Switch by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. And then finally, in my top three would be Our Iceberg is Melting. And this is a book by John Kotter, who I previously referenced as the father of change management. Our Iceberg is Melting specifically depicts a story about a group of penguins on a melting iceberg and the changes that they have to go through in order to effectively survive. And when you take this parable and you parallel it to your organizations or those organizations undergoing significant transformations, it really makes a lot of sense. And as part of this book, John Kotter introduces what he calls his 8-step change management framework. And so I should also note, one of the reasons I selected John Kotter and his learnings for the purposes of this webinar is because he is a Harvard Business School professor and a New York Times bestselling author. He is highly respected in this field. And candidly, his book is a quick read, and it just simply makes sense to me. So for the purposes of today, we're going to talk about John Kotter's successful change management steps. So Kotter actually writes about 8 steps. in his framework. But I know we have a finite amount of time on our webinar today, and I also believe in trying to keep things clear and simple. So for purposes of simplicity, I've bucketed, if you will, his 8 steps into 4 categories. The first being set the stage. The second, decide what to do. Third, make it happen. And fourth, make it stick. So those are pretty straightforward. Set the stage, decide what to do, make it happen, and make it stick. We are going to delve into each of these a little more carefully or closely. The one thing I would ask you to remember is that throughout all steps of the change management process, and really in everything you do as a business professional, it is important that you remember to embrace relationship management skills. Relationships can truly make you or break you, and so we'll talk about those a little in depth in a moment. So the first step, or the first category in Kotter's successful change management, is setting the stage. This is broken into 2 particular areas. The first is creating a sense of urgency. You have to help others in your organization or on your team understand why you need to change. And that can sometimes be a tall order. I'll talk a little bit later about my experiences here at Blue Care Network, but I can tell you, when people are comfortable, when people have achieved success and they enjoy the status quo, it can be incredibly difficult to get them to embrace the need for change. But this is literally the first thing you must do if you want to be successful. Help them understand why change is important. Help them understand if there is a backstory or there's context you can share, or giving them examples of what you intend to do. That's important to do as a first step. And then along with that, you have to ensure they understand the importance of acting swiftly. I know in my organization, we have lots of great people, and some of them, I'll say, are a little bit more deliberative than others. They like to admire the problem. They're not really skilled at moving swiftly. And so you as a leader have to be certain that you're creating that sense of urgency, helping them see the need for change, and letting them know that we need to move, and we need to move in a fast or efficient manner. The second component here is pulling together your guiding team. This is what you call your A team, your dream team. These are your top talent in the organization, and I will tell you, I don't care what their titles are. You want to find those people that have strong leadership skills, they're great at communicating, they have some level of authority or the ability to act with authority, they're analytical, they're strategic, they are people that are driven, hardworking, passionate, and they will help you and the team around you embrace and move forward with the change. So first up, setting the stage. The next category that we'll discuss is deciding what to do. This is also fairly straightforward, although it takes some time. You have to make an investment and a commitment to really understanding certain aspects of your business before you can do this, but you have to develop the change vision and the strategy. You need to be very clear in how the future will differ from those things that you've done in the past. You can't leave that up to people's imagination. You have to sometimes be very specific and deliberate in spelling this out, and then you can help them make the future a reality. So develop your change vision and strategy, clarify how the future differs from the past. Third, this is what we call the make it happen category, and this is comprised of really 4 key components. The first is communicate for understanding and buy-in. You have to touch or reach as many people as you possibly can. It's not good enough to talk to 1 or 2 people and hope that they spread the message. You have to embrace the masses to make sure as many people as possible actually understand, and then more importantly, accept or embrace your future state vision and strategy. And that, again, involves investing time. You have to make a commitment to being communicative and ensuring that people have a good enough understanding where they can see the vision, they understand the role they play in the vision, and they embrace that. Secondly, you need to empower others to act. It's important that you as a leader do your best to remove any barriers that could be in the way of your success. You want to make sure that people have the tools, the resources, the information, the access, whatever it may be, so that they can, in fact, carry out the vision and embrace the strategy. If you tell someone that they need to do a certain set of things, but they can't effectively do it because they're not appropriately equipped, that defeats your ability to change effectively. Third, producing short-term wins. You have, in some instances, really lofty or aggressive goals, or you have change that to some people can seem like it's insurmountable. We're not sure how we're going to quite get there. You have to make sure that as you have small milestones or wins along the way, that you share those and you keep people encouraged to keep morale up. You let them know that you appreciate the efforts, you see the work, you value what they're doing, and that helps them recognize that they can actually get to that ultimate goal. Fourth is don't let up. You have to be relentless about initiating change, and it's sometimes change after change after change after change until that vision or strategy becomes reality. So that's your third category, making it happen. And that can take a while. Fourth is make it stick. So once you've had some wins, you've got buy-in, you're moving towards your vision and strategy, you've really created a new culture, or potentially have created a new culture for your organization or your team. You have to really hold on to that. It is all too easy for people to fall back into old habits or do things that are more comfortable to them. You know, they might have been doing their job the same way for the last 5 or 10 years. And in our case here, we have people that have been here 20 plus years. And I ask, well, why do you do that? Well, I've always done it that way. And I've done it that way for 20 years. Once you set the tone, the new vision, the strategy, the culture, make sure that you continue to reinforce that you as a leader walk the talk, you embrace it, you own it, you hold others accountable for that until it's strong enough to replace those old traditions itself. Okay. So this is where I will talk to you a little bit about those things that are near and dear to me. I mentioned earlier that I started as the CEO at Blue Care Network about 2.5 years, so not quite 2.5, but mid-2016, July, as a matter of fact. And it was a time of tremendous change, what I call transformative change in the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan enterprise. Our CEO at the parent decided that we needed a new organizational structure that would prepare us to be sustainable and successful for the long term. We'd already been very successful. The parent entity had been around at that point about 75 years with large success, largest market share in the state, just doing all sorts of great things. And yet and still, he felt like we needed to do something different so that we could be around another 75 years. So at the same time, I'm coming into Blue Care Network as the new CEO. This is where my relationship management skills had to really kick in. There are lots of relationship management skills we could talk about, but for the purposes of today's conversation, I'm going to focus really on 3. So these are 3 that are near and dear to my heart, that really resonate with me, that make sense with me, and I hope will make sense to you. The first is being sincere. In order to get people to follow you, to rally behind you, to support you in your vision, you have to prove that you're sincere. You have to genuinely demonstrate that you care about people. People will quickly detect if you are disingenuous. It is a dream killer. If you are a leader and you don't care about people and it shows, they will not follow you. You will not be successful with your change. So being sincere is important, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Building trust is also critical. People have to trust you in order to respect you and in order to embrace your vision. So building trust is key, and I'll again get into that in my story in a moment. And then the third piece is developing mutual respect. And like everything else I've mentioned, this requires you to truly invest time and to meet people where they are and get to know folks and what motivates them. So being sincere. Going back to when I started at BCN, I had been in the enterprise at that point for almost 6 years. I knew some people in the organization, but not many. And Blue Care Network at the time had roughly 1,500 what we call workforce members, or team members that touched our health maintenance organization. I had an opportunity coming in to do a communication to our workforce. And this is something, you know, because I knew I was going to be moving over and others didn't, and I had a little bit of time to really think about it. And I started off on a Saturday morning just on my iPad, typing up what I called a letter to the BCN team. So when others learned that I was starting, I was immediately met with a team of writers. You know, I have people that try to handle me and tell me what I need to do and whatnot. And so they said, "Oh, you don't have to write that. We can write something for you. You know, this is no big deal. Don't even worry about it. You had other stuff to worry about." I said, "No, it's important for me to send my own message. I wanted to show people I was truly sincere, that I was humble, that I was grateful for the opportunity to serve as their leader, and that I understood a little bit about the business. I didn't know everything coming in, but what I did know was largely positive. I knew what a great culture we had as an organization. I felt I knew some of the things that were important to the team, and so I wanted to demonstrate that. And I wanted to see me as just a person. You know, I am not altogether different from anybody else on this webinar or on our team. You know, I get up and I put my pants on a leg at a time every morning, and I wanted that side to show. I wanted them to know that I'm a wife and a mother of 3. I wanted them to know I have hobbies and interests. I wanted them to know that I'm proud of the work they do. And so I sent my own communication, probably much to the chagrin of some people on my team, but I did it anyway. And in that communication, I also addressed something that I thought most people would be interested in knowing, and some might have found it odd, but I made a point to state that I was going to maintain the existing dress code. And some of you are probably going like, "Well, who cares about that? Why would she mention the dress code?" We have a casual business environment at Blue Care Network. Not business casual, casual. You can wear jeans, gym shoes, sweatshirts, whatever. As long as you are clean and relatively wrinkle-free, we will embrace you. Come to work. We want you to be clean, but more importantly, I want people to be comfortable. You know, we have a lot of work that we do here. We're very productive, and it's important for people to come in and feel good. I thought it was important that people knew I wasn't expecting them to suddenly convert to a strict business attire wardrobe where they had to go out and buy new clothes and they had to worry about dry cleaning and all of that. And so I put that in my letter. I said, "Oh, by the way, I know the dress code is really important here, and we're going to keep it." And you would be amazed at the number of people that came back to me or sent me notes and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're not changing the dress code." And so that was important, and that was part of me being sincere and really starting to build the trust. The next thing I did was so that was day 1. On day 2, I had begun to schedule a series of what I call meet and greets. And we had 6 locations across the state, including those approaching the Upper Peninsula, for those of you familiar with the state of Michigan. So they were widespread. And it was important for me to go to each of our locations so that people had an opportunity to meet me, shake my hand, tell me their name, you know, their role in the organization, how they might contribute to our success, how long they've been here, anything else. And I heard all sorts of things from people about pets and family members. And I started here when I was 2, and it was just an opportunity for them to share and for me to learn and get comfortable with them. And again, back to my point with the letter, I wanted them to know that I wasn't all that different. I wanted them to know that I pride myself on being accessible, and that it was important for me to know my team, because we would not have the success that we've had as an organization were it not for these people, again, regardless of role or title. You know, I embraced everybody from individual contributors on up the leadership chain. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to get to know the team. And so that really helped to build trust. About 90 days later, I sent out another communication. We hosted a webinar, which is like a town hall, and it was myself and some of the other senior leaders. We did a panel discussion. We did a lot of Q&A. And since that time, I've also continued to do something called Talk with Tiffany, where at least monthly, I am out at one of our locations with a small group of people. It's completely voluntary. They sign up. It's confidential. It's like Vegas. Whatever they come and say during that session stays with us as a group. But we talk about what's going on with our business, our industry, things that are successes that we're proud of, opportunities for improvement. I answer questions on anything and everything. There's nothing that is out of bounds or out of scope. I am happy to do that because, again, it builds that trust, and it shows that I respect them as members of our team. And in turn, I hope builds their respect of me and their trust in me. So having said that, those things are foundational. Your relationship management skills have to be there before people will follow you. And I knew that. So we invested quite a bit of time getting to know the team, acknowledging people for their roles in the organization. And so one of the things I did relative to setting the stage, and if you remember, setting the stage was that piece where we talked about the need for change, and then we started to identify that guiding team. We needed to change our strategic framework. There was a long-term strategy in place. It was a 5-year plan. My predecessor set before I came in, and there were probably about 2 years left on the plan when I got here. I recognized that there were some things that were working well that made sense, but I also recognized we had some opportunities to do things differently. And so I started talking about that with people on the team in various forums. The other thing I did was to bring new people onto our executive staff. Now, prior to me coming on, our executive staff was solely comprised of what people would call executives. They were vice presidents or above. I am not one that is title driven. I think I've said that numerous times. In meeting people across the organization, was able to fairly quickly discern who our top talent was. And so I was looking for those people that were hardworking and passionate, those people that had great ideas and were willing to share them, the people that were knowledgeable, the people that had a desire to learn and grow within our organization. And so there were a handful of people that I afforded opportunities to come on or to join executive staff, and they were not vice presidents. In most cases, they were directors. And one of the questions this morning on the webinar was, well, did you get any pushback from the executives about adding non-executives to your staff? Absolutely, I did. It wasn't always direct. You sometimes get what I call the side eye, where people are looking like, what's so-and-so doing here? But they quickly got over it because I made a point to welcome those new members to the team and explain what I saw in them and why they were afforded the opportunity to sit at the table. And then those folks lived up to what I had already seen in them, and they demonstrated the fact that they were capable, that they were insightful, that they were thoughtful, and it's been really a win-win for all of us. And one of those directors was recently promoted actually this week to a vice president role in another part of our organization. And so I say all that to say, set the stage, build that team that can really help you guide the change. And so part of the change we were going through is launching a new strategic framework. We spent a lot of time reaching across the organization, talking to various business partners about what was working well for us, where we had strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we took that information and we formed our framework of 3 key strategic pillars. These are things that we are focused on daily across our organization. We made sure that they were clear and simple. They were things that the team could embrace and understand. And they're simply this. 1 is affordability. We have to ensure that we have affordable products that our members not only feel comfortable in purchasing, but that they value. When someone has a Blue Care Network health insurance card in their wallet or their pocketbook, I want them to feel good about that and know that we are a quality organization and we are here committed to serving their needs. So affordability is number 1. The second pillar is around operational excellence. And this is where we are laser focused on continuous improvement, looking at our operational processes, doing self-audits and assessments to ensure that we know how we can be a stronger, better organization, embracing technology, sometimes making decisions to stop doing things that we used to do. And then that third pillar is around being a trusted advisor, really helping our members and customers to navigate what I call the complex landscape of health insurance. It is difficult enough for those of us that are in the industry. We've seen a lot of change. There are lots of rules and regulations, things to comply with. There's authorizations and referrals, and it's confusing. And so for those that are not intimately involved or don't do this on a daily basis, I know it's even more so confusing. And so we pride ourselves on partnering with our members and customers and with the physicians and doctors and hospitals that are part of our network to ensure that we are the best business partner we can be and that we offer tools and resources to make it easier to do business with us. And that also sometimes involves embracing technology. And so we rolled out our new strategic framework earlier this year through first a focus group. We had some focus groups, so I had a chance to kind of practice my spiel and get some feedback from a smaller subset of our population before we rolled it out to the broader community here. When we rolled it out to the broader community, we had a series of town hall meetings where we talked about the framework, we talked about our history, where we've been, where we're going, and why. And then we afforded people the opportunity to ask questions. It was completely open-ended, non-scripted. We had folks running mics in the room just so people had an opportunity to share their feedback or ask questions about what was going on. We then have followed that up with a series of workshops where we have specific experts that are focused on key elements of our strategy that are able to sit down with other people that are more highly impacted and talk about what really needs to happen. And oftentimes in those meetings, again, we have those individual contributors, the people that are frontline, the worker bees that really know best what this organization needs to run successfully. And so what we've tried to do to make it stick is just to reinforce the message at every turn. We have monitors throughout our buildings where we have frequently we share small wins. We highlight people that have been in the organization long term. We celebrate successes. Earlier this summer, we celebrated our 20th anniversary as a business, and we had a barbecue. And while it might seem kind of silly, we made a big deal of it. It was a real barbecue on the lawn, tents, ice cream carts, lots of food. We had buses that transported people in from other locations. And we really just took a moment to celebrate our successes. And this was important to me because it helped to reinforce the culture. It helped to demonstrate to people that we as a leadership team genuinely care about those of us here. And we didn't want to wait till 25 years, which some people think is more of a milestone. We wanted to do it now because this helps to keep people motivated and help them to embrace the change that is abundant here. So with that, I will say I'd like to close my formal comments with a quote from John Kotter. To deliver a significant change, one must win over the hearts and minds of people. And so again, I would encourage you to build relationships, get to know people, understand what motivates them so that they can really support you as you embark on the change in your respective organizations. And with that, Sue, I will open up the floor for questions. I will say I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing some of my personal experiences and providing just some insights to the framework of change management, but I really look forward to answering any questions you might have. Actually, I have a question that's come through already. So the first question is, how important is it for everyone to understand the why, the reason for the change? So first, thank you for the question. I think it's absolutely imperative and critical for people to understand the why. And I probably differ in opinion from some of my peers because I have other leaders that I know that I've worked with over the course of the years that would say, well, I don't need to explain myself. This is what we're doing. They just need to get on board. I don't subscribe to that philosophy at all. I think people have an easier time adapting to change, embracing the change, being part of the team, really buying in and helping to achieve the vision when they understand why you're doing something. I think if you keep people in the dark and you're not communicative or you withhold pieces of information, you're doing a disservice to not only them, but to yourself and your organization. Now, having said that, I also know that you aren't always in a position to share all of the facts. There are some things that may be confidential or things that just can't be shared for various reasons. You have to, bear that in mind, but weigh out how much you can actually share so that people feel like they're valued and that their opinion matters and that you care enough to give them the full story. I don't think you can just tell someone you need to change and do X, Y, and Z without sharing with them why you're trying to make a change. I just don't, you can do it, but I don't think you'll be as successful.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? So I'm going to wait. I'm sure questions are going to come in, but while we're doing that, I had some questions from the session earlier today that I will share with you because this might spark thought for someone. One of the questions I received was about work-life balance. They're like, how do you, at your level in your role, achieve balance? And this is something I hear, or a question I hear all the time from people that I mentor or people I encounter in different areas of the business. For me, work-life balance is extraordinarily important. I mentioned earlier I'm a wife and a mother of three. My children are 19, 11, and 6. My oldest, my daughter, is the 19-year-old, is a sophomore in college. My 11-year-old is also a girl. She's a sixth grader, so it's her first time in middle school, which is an experience in and of itself. And then my son is my first grader. He's 6 years old. And so I said this morning, I'll say it again, and I'll be unapologetic about it. As much as I love my role here, as much as I love this organization, the team, and I'm passionate about what I do, my family comes first. And yes, sometimes I have to make sacrifices because I have work commitments that I have to honor. I'd like to stay here. But when I can, I make a point to support my family as well. If my daughter's now playing the clarinet in the band, and when she has her first concert, you can best believe I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure that's on my schedule. My son's got a Halloween party coming up on the 31st at school. He's got a half day. They got a costume parade. I'm going to take a half day off, or actually I'm going to take the day off, so I can be there and go to his parade because that's something that's important to him. But I have to schedule it in. So you have to be organized. You have to plan for that. It's obviously a little easier for me because I have some flexibility with my role. I know that's not always the case, but to the extent where you have control and you can schedule things, you need to do that. You have to plan ahead. It's also imperative that you have a good support system. I cannot do what I do alone. I have a wonderful husband who's a business owner. He travels a lot, but when he's in town, he's hands-on. He's that dad that's dropping kids off and picking kids up and starting the dinner. And then my mother is also, I'm blessed that she's still living and in good health. And even though she lives almost 2 hours away from me, she stays with us during the work week. So Monday, she comes down Monday afternoon. She picks my son up from school because he gets out at like 3:15. There's no way I can get him. And then she also stays through Friday afternoon. And so sometimes she does drop off. She's always doing pickup. She's helping to get a hot breakfast on the table in the morning or pack a lunch. She really makes it that much easier for me and gives me comfort if I have a late meeting, knowing that she's there and my kids are well cared for. Everyone doesn't have that luxury, but find some support for yourself in your, family, your local community. Maybe you have a church home, maybe you have friends at work where you can do things, but support one another. And it's also important as part of that work-life balance that you take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever that means for you. Know that you have to invest in yourself and you have to do nice things for you so that you have the capacity to help and support others. And I said this earlier and I'll say it again. It's like the flight attendants tell you when you get on the airplane, please secure your mask before assisting others. You can't run full throttle and take care of everybody at work and take care of your family, your spouse, your children, your aging parents, whoever, volunteering and do nothing for yourself, because at some point you will crash and burn. And so you have to value yourself, plan yourself into your calendar and your schedule of doing things for nice people. You should be on that list. Other questions that have come in? No? Okay. You guys are making me go to the archives here. Okay. So another one we got this morning was, when considering the need to make a change, how do you determine how far into the structure you need to go? And so I said earlier, it really depends on your organization or your team. But for me personally, in my experience, I have always felt the need to go deep. I didn't stop at people that I felt were just my peers or executive level or leaders, managers, directors, supervisors. I like to get to that front line, the people that really know what's going on in the business. And I think that helps to reinforce the change or whatever it is you're attempting to do. And then you also have to sometimes what I call manage up. You need to ensure that the leaders above you have a good understanding of what you're doing and that they buy in and are supportive before you get too far down the road. Any questions? Pretty quiet group. All right. Oh, how much time do we have? Sure. Oh, wow. Somebody somewhere has to have a question. Anyone want to share an experience that they've had in their organizations or on their teams with change? Love to hear from you.
Move it out, so I can put it right back. Save it properly.
Someone's talking. Can't make out what you said.
This is your last opportunity. Speak up if you have a question.
I'm in the group chat.
So while we're waiting for the next question to come in, I will say I commend those of you on the webinar. I think it's great that you are members of NMA. I'm an NMA member. It's something I require of all my mentees. It really demonstrates that you are willing to investing time for your own professional development and growth. And so make sure you're taking full advantage of the organization and what it has to offer through all of the leadership development sessions, the opportunities to interact with the executives at your teams, because I can tell you, I pay attention here to who's an NMA and who isn't. And those that are participating in the organization might get a second look if it comes down to, you know, two people getting a position. I'm like, hey, this person already demonstrated that they're committing to bettering themselves. Okay.
So
what is my
just one quick question.
Oh, sure.
How would you suggest that the chapter, your NMA local organization, can best benefit your larger organization, and how do you as an executive reach into the NMA chapter and get involved and support them?
Okay,
so
thank
how
you for the
how
question.
does that partnership work?
Okay, so thank you for the question. The question, I believe, is around the partnership between NMA and the local chapter and the executive team at a given organization. And our organization, our leadership team, I think really embraces NMA. We are very much committed to the fact that we have a host of people across the company that are interested in growth and are willing to make that investment in themselves to take steps to prepare for whatever professional opportunities might come their way. So having said that, I look at our NMA chapter as what I would equate to a breeding ground. You know, when I'm thinking about succession planning, and I can tell you we as an organization take succession planning very seriously. We do it formally every 2 years, but it's something that's really top of mind all the time. I think of NMA as an association within our company that affords people opportunities for professional development, for exposure to other parts of the enterprise. And in terms of our interaction, or my interaction in particular with NMA, lots of things. We host something called the Blue Night Mixer every month, where we have different executives. Sometimes we just host a get-together, and it might be at a local restaurant. We've got some refreshments, and people can come out and just chat with the executive, ask questions, interact, and oftentimes other executives will come and support that as well. We have more formal things like lunch and learns and professional development workshops and seminars. Every year, our enterprise CEO, Dan Lepp, hosts a big NMA meeting, and it is the most well-attended of all meetings of the year. Like literally everybody that's an NMA member shows up, all the executives show up. It's a big production. We talk about all the awards and things we've learned and earned over the year, and we celebrate those people that are part of NMA. I have seen some of my mentees that have more recently joined the organization really jump in with both feet and start to chair committees. One of my mentees is a co-chair for the Professional Development Committee, and so she and others have tapped me to do different lunch and learns, to talk about various topics, to do webinars. Matt Zellman, shout out to Matt, is almost what I call a lifer with NMA. He tapped me months ago to do the webinars today. We have people here that have been members dating back to the 90s, and they are passionate about it, and they continue to grow our local organizations. We have a Detroit chapter and a Lansing chapter. They exchange ideas and best practices. And like I said earlier, those of us on the executive team, at least I know who's in NMA, and I don't want to say I hold them in higher regard than others, but the truth of the matter is I hold them in higher regard than others, because those are people that have demonstrated to me they care about their career. And I don't remember if I said it this afternoon or this morning, but in order for someone to get on my calendar for mentoring, they must be an NMA member. they're not a member and they don't choose to join after I've mentioned it to them, that shows me they're not really serious about their own growth. Does that answer your question? Somewhat?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the other question that came through on the line was, what is my biggest leadership lesson learned? Thank you for the question. That's a tough one. I've learned so many lessons over the course of 27 years. Leadership lessons. I have many, but I'll share one in particular. I'd say the biggest lesson I've learned is the importance of being candid and transparent and honest when giving feedback. This is something that all too often people avoid. They aren't comfortable if they have news to share that's less than pleasant, or something's not going quite as they would have hoped, or they need to tell someone, hey, I need you to get on board or do different or what have you. It can be difficult. One of the things I learned, and I read a book years ago called Crucial Conversations, and that's also, I did a lunch and learn on that in one of our chapters about a year ago. But one of the things I learned in that book is to really embrace those conversations. It's important to plan for them. It's important to do it at the right time in the right setting. You want to be timely in giving the feedback. You want to be open and direct with people. You want to make sure you have their examples. But the worst thing you can possibly do is to avoid those crucial conversations. It's a disservice to that other person because they don't have the benefit of having your honest, candid feedback. And it's a disservice to you because you're walking around with this anxiety around what you shoulda, coulda, woulda, coulda, told this person, or the feedback you could have given. And oftentimes when you don't tend to have those conversations tensions build and they mount, and then you end up in a situation that's maybe explosive in nature. You blurt something out that you shouldn't have, and maybe you do it in a team meeting and it's not ideal. So if you have something that you feel really strongly about, you know deep down in your gut you need to give the conversation or have the conversation, make the time to do that, plan for it, be thoughtful, put yourself in that other person's shoes, and then just share openly. And then after you've shared, pause, be quiet, and take the time to actively listen to the feedback that they're giving you. Oftentimes when you have differences of opinion or miscommunications or something's happened on the team, it's because they have one perspective and you have another, and you haven't taken the time to talk about it and meet in the middle. So the lesson learned for me is not to avoid crucial conversations. And I feel so much better when I have them. I have stomach aches going into some of these. I'm just like, oh, I hate to have this talk. But by the time I'm done, I just feel this huge sense of relief. And I've had them both ways. I've had them with people that report to me. Actually, 3 ways. I've had them with peers, and I've also had to have them with leaders above me. And I've never come out of one of those conversations wishing I hadn't had it. If anything, I wish I'd had it sooner. Other questions? You guys are awful quiet today.
Maybe it's because it's the afternoon.
It could be. I'm after lunch or something. I don't know.
Yes, an after lunch thing. This is your last chance, everyone.
Don't be shy. There's nothing you can't ask. You're anonymous and everything. I don't even know who you are.
I'm going to unmute everyone and see if there's any other chatter, any that you pick up that way.
Okay.
I understand how you feel about fruitful conversations. There have been times when I wish I'd done it a lot sooner than I did.
Yes, absolutely. I'm always like, oh, I should have had that weeks ago.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
learned in my age to go ahead and have it sooner rather than later. It saves me a lot of headache and stress. And usually I find that people on the receiving end are appreciative, which is always feeling.
It goes such a long way towards clearing the air.
Yeah. I think it also builds that trust and respect, because sometimes people are just shocked. I had a situation at another company where I had to give a gentleman feedback, and he was more seasoned. He'd been in the industry a lot longer than me and thought he knew more than me. And he was really kind of passive aggressive, and I had to call him out on the behavior. And I did it privately. And I told him what my observations were, and I think his initial reaction was shock. He did not expect me to say anything. And then his whole tone and tenor changed. He respected the fact that I addressed it, and his behavior ultimately changed. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
I'm trying.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
The
trying.
other thing I would say to you all is,
I've got
and I mentioned
a Monday
this,
thing, I've got food
uh-oh.
at 4:30. I gotta take it downtown. Get that.
I
I
think I
can't tell if
got it.
someone's asking a question if they're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say, one of the things I talked about earlier in the day was, not second guessing yourself. If you are in a leadership role, understand that you're there for a reason, that there's someone or several someones in the organization that has placed their trust in you and believes in your capabilities, your skill set, your knowledge and expertise. And so try not to second guess yourself. If you have to make a decision, try to, of course, do your due diligence, weigh the facts, figure out what you need to do. But then once you've made that decision, be confident in moving forward. And don't let other people's dissent sway you from the direction that you feel you need to take. Now, having said that, it's important to listen to feedback. If you're going down a path and you've launched a strategy and a vision, and then you ultimately realize it's not working quite like you thought it should, or you're getting a lot of feedback around things that need to be done differently, it's okay to pivot. But when you do that, make sure that you remain communicative and you talk to people about why there's a need to shift now the direction, and try to be thoughtful and mindful about how you do that, and the fact that you don't want to be shifting every week where people just think you're indecisive and don't know what to do either. So it's about balance there. So unless there are other questions, Sue, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity. I enjoyed talking with folks today. Nothing I said is rocket science. It's just, Tiffany talking from experience and things that I've learned on my journey. Know that I continue to learn on a daily basis, and I encourage you all to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Well, Tiffany, thank you for taking your time to do these webinars for us today. And I'll tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed both of them, and I know everyone else has too. And,
Yes, thank you very much.
And
thank you.
Again, congratulations on being selected the 2018 NMA Executive of the Year. And we're very proud of you. And I thank you for being such a big supporter of NMA. And again, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to give these webinars for us. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sue. I appreciate you. And again, congratulations on your retirement. We'll miss you.
Thank you very much. And